Hello, America. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We are the show that is freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. And we defend God, family, country in that order. And we also like to help the oppressed. And right now, the American people are carrying such a financial burden in foreign policy and these continuing wars that we are oppressed. And we need to look for options and alternatives, and we are at all-time lows with our oil reserves. Keep that in mind because that means people are going to look for somewhere else to go with their money than the dollar. That's going to get killed with inflation. It's already bad enough, but it's going to get worse. And people are looking for options. And here to talk to us about these options is Guy Gottslack from My Digital Money. And Guy, it's good to have you back on. Um, I want to look at Bitcoin real quick. It's down 50% from ATH. And the media is saying, it's dead on arrival. It's all over for them. I don't buy that for a second. What do you say about this?
Yeah, thanks for having me. As always, pleasure. Yeah, this
Absolutely.
is the same story over and over again. It's down 50% from the all-time high, which was about 126, I think, and we're at about 66 right now. So yeah, this is if it's gonna die, this would be basically the seventh time that it has died on a schedule. So this just maps exactly onto Bitcoin's rhythm after every halving since 2012. So, just to remind your audience, a halving is when the rate of new Bitcoin halves every 4 years, right? And there can only ever be 21 million Bitcoins.
Yep.
So we're going to hit that, in the future. But basically, on the way there, we're having the supply. And back when, it was a retail story, mostly, people buying were retail and not institutional. The having essentially was driving the rhythm, right? It was dictating, the 4 year cycle. And so, basically, I can even go through every cycle, in 2011, 94% down from $32 to virtually zero after the Mt. Gox hack. That's an exchange. So the obituaries were written and it recovered and ended up going to 1163. Again, 2013 down 87% when China banned financial institutions from handling it. And that was like the one of the longest crashes in Bitcoin history. For 48 months it took to recover. 2018 there was the ICO bubble.
Yeah.
We fell 84% from 19,000 to about 3,000. Retail buyers were underwater for years. And then again, 2020, we down to 50%. We ended up at an all-time high 2021. Um, and then, then we went down and then back up in 2025. So we recovered, even after there was the Terra Luna crash, it was, all these things that happened, people thought it was the end. And we recovered every single time. Um, and so, yeah, I got to tell you, one of my biggest regrets is that I invested in 2021. It almost is hard to admit. I invested at 66,000 Bitcoin. And I won't tell you how many Bitcoins I bought, but basically, this is one of my biggest regrets. I basically had to wait 4 years for it to double. And now I'm back to break even and I have to wait, probably a couple of years to be probably four times my money, which is not bad. It's way better than the stock market. But if I would have invested at the bottom, which is kind of around where we are right now, the bottom of the cycle, I would have been up, 6 to 12 times in a couple of years, right? Right now, I'd be at break even, and I mean, sorry, I would be not a break even. I would be three times my money right now. So the moral of the story is that this is actually a perfect time to invest. We might still go up and down. We might end up, at a low in a few months or in November. If you really follow the pattern, it would happen around November this year. Um, so I always tell people when they ask me, whether to invest, you do it right now, you could basically avoid one of the biggest regrets that I had.
Buy
Um,
low, sell high. There's
yeah,
another factor I'm going to throw into this. I think I know why this is happening, and I'm not alone in my belief, but what we're seeing, Guy, is the tech bros are backing off from pouring massive capital investment into the data centers right now. They're slowing that down. Now, I think it's because they're getting so much pushback from the public, and public officials are running scared right now because people are mad. They're going to city council meetings, county supervisors, writing letters, and so the tech bros have backed off a little bit. But I think they're going to do that until November. And I think
Mhm.
after the election, we're going to see a resumption. But I think what they're doing right now is really telling. I've been told they're going to gold, silver, and crypto and Bitcoin. That's where they're going right now in this interim period. So this is going to drive up what's going on. So now's the time, people. And I'll tell you, I think the ceiling is going to be what you just said was November. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so if you look at it, the reason why I invested at all-time high, it's natural. It's natural human emotion, right? You see
Sure.
everyone's profiting. So I thought, okay, by the end of the year, maybe we'll even get to 100. Let me make a quick buck. And I got caught up in the hype. And that was one of the biggest lessons I've ever had, is that you really want to invest when people are feeling like they are right now, scared, it's quiet, it's boring. This is the time to invest. And if you're willing to hold for a few years, right? Um, I'd say about in 2 to 4 years, you can be at 2 to 4 times your money. And in 8 years, you can be at, 4 to 7 or 4 to 8 times. It takes about 7 years to double your money with the stock market. So you would be a way better position, with crypto. And that's just a base case, right? Forget, all the other theses that are out there, like institutional inflows, right? We've never seen anything like it. So that could actually accelerate the timeline. And actually the price target could go even higher than what I'm saying because, we're talking about 401ks being open to crypto. This is something that's happening right now. As soon as that happens, that opens up trillions of dollars of capital into crypto. And we also have the Clarity Act and,
Yeah, let's
all
talk
these
about the
things.
Clarity Act. I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yep.
that's such a big deal right now, and I don't want to just skim over that. Tell the
hmm
people what the Clarity Act is and how it comes into play for our discussion.
Yeah, so the Digital Assets Market Clarity Act, it's called. It ends a decade of crypto living in a regulatory limbo between the SEC and the CFTC. It draws jurisdictional lines in permanent federal law. The House already passed the 294 to 134, I think. The Senate banking advanced it 15 to 9. And lately it's been held up because of an ethics provision. And Trump literally just happened Monday night. President Trump agreed to the ethics provision that had stalled this Clarity Act for months. And essentially, what it does is it bans federal officials from issuing cryptocurrencies and profiting from digital assets while in office. I've always had a little bit of an issue with, the Trump meme coin and profiting and everything. So this is something that, they negotiated and it's going into the bill to potentially be voted on even this week. Uh, it's been a goal to get it done by the August recess. But I think it's going to pass by January. And, this is something that, the reason why it's good is because governments, they don't write rule books for things they expect to disappear, right? So it legitimizes it. It brings in institutional money, which kind of like provide, like it gives you that safety, that bottom, right? That we want. I want more retail investors to get in, but having institutional money in it, institutional money is smarter, I hate to say, right? So they're the ones that would get in at the bottom. They would recognize what I'm telling you, that we're at the bottom of a cycle. So they would keep that bottom higher, right? In every cycle. And so, that's why the Clarity Act is important because it's going to, right now, because of the current administration, institutions can, be in this game, but who knows what will happen in the next administration. And so that's why it's important to get this into federal law so that it's permanent, right? And then we have a favorable environment permanently. That would bring institutions in, right? Because they're in it for the long run, right? They want to reduce
Yeah,
the
I
risk
agree.
for the
And I'd
long run.
say this, if Peter Thiel's clone, JD Vance, oh, excuse me, if JD Vance, vice president, becomes the president in 2028,
Hmm.
I think you're going to see this really explode because he's a digital guy. I mean, Thiel put 15 million into his Senate primary race. It was a
Yeah.
record at that time. So that's what's going to happen. With the Clarity Act, what was the ethics provision?
Yeah, the provision was around having elected officials being able to create cryptocurrencies and profit, from them. So you know how Trump created his meme coin and the Milana coin and all these things. And he was able to profit because his popularity, people invest in it, and so the Democrats were going back and forth, basically putting provisions in place to prevent this. And so I haven't seen the bill yet. It hasn't come out yet, so I don't know where they ended up exactly, but I know that he conceded on some points, and there is going to be something in there limiting the profiting from federal officials.
Going forward, but this doesn't restrict his family. I've looked into this World
Yeah.
Financial Liberty with Witkoff and Jared Kushner and that crew. I'm sure you know about them.
Hmm.
Uh, and and I read a, a, a profit sheet for the two sons, Eric Jr. and or Eric and Don Jr. And Don Jr. was worth, I want to say, I'm going to be close on this. I might be off a little bit, but not much. 40 million, and now he's worth 300 million because of crypto investments. And Eric Jr., or excuse me, Eric was worth 30 million, but he's now worth 400 million. And so, and there's no federal law that says your family can't profit from this. Did the ethics provision correct that? And could that explain Trump's delay in putting this through so his sons could make money?
Yeah, I mean we haven't seen it yet. It hasn't come out, but I don't think it mentions it's going to mention anything about family. It's more discussing the officials, the elected officials themselves not being able to profit. So hopefully there's nothing in there about the family, but um, I think it's more around creating coins that are, associated with the actual official and allowing them to directly profit.
Well,
But we'll wait and see
that's
what's in
Trump.
it.
He's got the Trump watch. I mean, it's just that's what Trump
Yeah.
does. But if there's no law against it, I can't fault him, and I can't fault his
Hmm.
sons. But I'm
Right.
surprised the Democrats aren't pushing harder on this. Except if you open that up for negotiation, then you also open up insider trading. You know what Congress does. So that's why I
Right.
think maybe that'll be a sacred cow. If it works for the country, I have to kind of like swallow hard and say good for Don and Eric, but yeah, I don't know. It kind of bothers me, but it also shows you that's where the smart money is going.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So yeah, I mean, if you zoom out and you look at the cycles, very important. I think right now, this year we're kind of like in that bottom. Not to say it's not going to go a little bit, it can always go a little bit lower, right? Um, but it's very unlikely. Even according to some analysts, I have some predictions here. Um, they put it very low like low probability that will go to 40,000s, for example. Like 21 shares calls the worst case in the low 40,000 structurally unlikely, and deep crashes below 50,000 are increasingly unlikely. So there's a lot of different predictions here that are pretty favorable, but uh, the bottom line is that the timing does matter, like when you get in. I think, you know, the timing won't punish you too much for getting in at the wrong time, but it will really reward you for getting in at the right time. That's the lesson that I learned, right?
Well,
I'm
there's a
still
historical
okay.
lesson. You're right. The historical lesson is it's hard to game the market, except right now we've been in a prolonged low, so that's a good time to get in. But other than that, when you get into crypto, you just got to jump on board and ride the crest and just let it go where it's going to go because eventually you're going to make more money.
Yeah, if you're able to hold, one cycle you can make a lot, two cycles you make a lot more, like one cycle you can make 2 to 4 times your money. It takes you 7 years to double that with the stock market. Two cycles, 4 to 7 times, three cycles, you're already at 10x, right? So it just depends, when your retirement is and how long you have to wait. But I always tell people diversify, even if you don't want to put a lot down. It's called schmuck insurance, right? So you put even a little bit, so at least you can't say, "Oh, I totally missed out." Yeah,
Um, so that was you caught me off guard with that term. I got to remember that. Smuck
yeah, that's
insurance.
that's kind of a common term in the industry.
Okay, so here's a question people are going to crucify me if I don't ask this question. So we know crypto has been sold as the independent and government, it's over there and we're over here and we're okay. So how on earth is it a good thing that government regulates crypto?
Yeah. So I mean, the reason why it's good is kind of like what I was saying earlier, that you don't regulate something that is going to go away, right? So it at least legitimizes it and it brings in institutions, so that as a retail investor, you are protected to some degree. There's a bottom, right? And that bottom holds right now. ETFs account for 5 to 6% of the total supply, and a lot of them they got in at like 88,000, I think is the average. Um, and they have a mandate, like that they can't lose, and so they're gonna hold on, and that helps keep that bottom higher, right? So that's
Yeah.
keeping us from crashing to like 20,000. So we're staying at, in the 60s, and we're unlikely to go down because of institutional money. So that's what, these regulations do is they legitimize, they bring in institutions. If it's permanent, then institutions are going to be, much more likely to get in, and the ETFs are going to increase and the inflows will increase. And that's good for us as retail investors because it protects us from losing. But, I do want more retail to take over. I think it has to, both of them have to happen, right? But that's obviously there are downsides of government being involved, but that's the upside. That's the advantage of it.
Well, yeah, and I think the big upside, just to put it in simple terms, in an old saying is, a rising tide lifts all boats. And if the government's going in that direction, it's probably not going to go broke. It's only going to increase in value. So that's another reason why it's a good time to jump in.
Yep.
That's how I see it. I just, I want to ask you something. And this is on the conspiracy side, except I've been able to validate a little of this, and it might explain why crypto was purposely repressed so the elite could buy up quite a bit of it. And it had to do with JP Morgan working with MicroStrategies that used crypto exclusively to pay down so much debt and it lowered the value. Do you think there's any credence to that story?
I'm not sure. I've heard that before. And I'm sure there are some people that they inject FUD, it's called in the industry, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, so that they could, keep the price low and buy low. Um, I have no idea. There's no evidence of that, but, I can imagine that being the case. I mean, you do look at what they did, right? The banks, and they said don't invest. JP Morgan basically would fire someone if they would recommend it
Yeah.
to their clients, right? The wealth advisory arm. Um, they kind of banned it, but then the CEO, when you look closely, he was investing. So, um,
But do you remember when
you look
Jamie
at
Dimon told his employees at JP Morgan, he said, if I catch you investing in crypto, I'm going to fire you immediately.
yeah,
And I don't know, that was maybe 8, 10 years ago. And that's sure
right.
not the case today.
Right. That's not the case now because so many people have adopted it that enough that it's really at this point too hard to be against it publicly. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's possible, but there's no evidence.
Well, I'm going to give you this is something that'll parallel a question that I wanted to ask you, which has to do with the Fed printing money. There's a lot of economists I talk to right now, and this has already happened before. After World War II, we had a debt to GDP ratio of 121%. And now it's reached that level again, the exact same number. And the way that they handled it was they caused inflation. So inflation would go up faster than wages people on fixed income, Social Security, and so forth. And so basically, the citizens were causing the real value of the debt, not numerically, but the value to go down. So you're inflating to devalue the debt. And Kevin Walsh has basically said that was his plan before he was sworn in. And Besant alluded to this about 14 months ago. And so what I'm looking at here is inflation is planned, printing is going to go crazy. And Trump says, yeah, I'm on board with this. And so we can go ahead and fight the war and just print all the money we can. Meanwhile, people paying higher prices will allow them to pay the debt off.
Hmm.
So the escape, again, is gold, silver, and crypto and Bitcoin.
Yep.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense to you, or do you disagree with that?
Uh, so whether or not there's an underlying intention of like intentionally putting creating inflation to kind of devalue the debt, I don't know about that, but regardless, right, I think there's printing, even if you want to devalue or not, it's going to happen, right? The mismanagement is going to always happen. There's no real way around it,
Right.
and I think the government's always going to print whether they want to or not, right? So it doesn't really matter to me like what the underlying intention is. There could be some truth to what you're saying, and so that only makes the case, it only makes, printing worse, right? If you are trying to devalue the debt, and God knows there's a lot of debt here. So, yeah, so I think the escape hatch is exactly right, like you said it.
And even
Gold.
if inflation continues on natural means, like just mismanagement, fighting a war maybe you shouldn't fight or whatever,
Yeah,
you're still going to get into the inflationary cycle, which
totally.
means your escape hatch is to go to what we just said, gold,
Yep.
silver, crypto, Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I
I
think
like your
the
answer better than mine, Guy, because it's simpler. Your
it's going to
answer,
happen no matter what, but you're just giving reasons why it could happen even worse, right?
yeah,
Uh,
I'm thinking outside the box, but your answer, Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the accurate one. And I think that your answer is very simple. It's going to happen anyway. We don't really need to look at so much of an underlying cause or intention. We're still going to get the same effect, whether it's intentional or not. I agree with that
I mean,
entirely.
look at the numbers and the charts and all that, right? So it's one thing that you can count on, right? Is inflation. Even though the CPI numbers came out okay in last month, right? But that's we had a good improvement, but that's because we had consecutive months of the war and the oil prices going up and all that. And so if you look at June, it looks like we improved a lot, but that's just because
It ain't going to be true in July. Here in Phoenix area, I live north of Phoenix, and in the Phoenix area, I'm paying over 40 cents more for a gallon of gas than I did 10 days ago. Okay. And we're just getting started with this resumption of the war. So, we had good news on inflation, although how accurate can it be when they don't count the price of gas or how much food costs? Like
right.
you don't have to eat or drive to work. But I do agree, that inflation, the core inflation did come down and it looked good on paper, but it's over with this war now. Those happy days are
Right.
gone.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll
Uh,
see now with the war what will happen in July. But yeah, I mean, I think the global money supply, it's been growing about 6% a year as central banks and US, Europe, and China inject liquidity to paper over their problems. So, every dollar printed strengthens Bitcoin's core identity as a hedge against currency debasement. So I think your audience understands that better than anyone. And so, Bitcoin is great. Gold is great. Uh, they each have different purposes, but I think a diversified portfolio is your escape hatch. You want like faster growth. Uh, crypto is really good. You want stable growth, gold is good. Silver, faster growth. We do that on My Digital Money, by the way. We have fractional gold and silvers. And in our sister company, Noble Gold, you can buy physical to be delivered, but we really believe in those three assets.
if I,
And then
for a new investor, I'd say this. I would get my gold delivered and I would hide it because you never know what some people are going to do. Okay. But with crypto and Bitcoin, I would use cold storage. Do you agree with that? Good
Yeah, and that's what we
military
have. Yeah, we have
grade cold storage.
cold storage, which means that it's offline, away from hacks. Um, and we're able to do that because of the way we're set up, and we are not set up for day trading. You can trade and then get your settlement the next day. And but the reason why it's next day settlement is, we're able to keep your crypto in cold storage, and that keeps it protected. So, we don't believe that you should buy Bitcoin and sell it like 2 hours later. And for us, it's more about the long term. Holding it for a year, at least a year or two, but even longer. It's about building real wealth with it.
Well, let's say the dollar hyperinflates and goes out of control, just hypothetically. Okay, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just
Yeah.
hypothetically, okay, you're still going to have your crypto and your crypto will increase in reaction to that event. And the same thing with other non-dollar stuff. Do you think that the tech bros are going to be successful in turning the dollar into a digital dollar? And if so, how would that affect what crypto and Bitcoin do?
So you're talking about stable coins,
Yes.
essentially? Yeah, I mean, stable coins are already increasing in supply, and that directly increases, Bitcoin price, right? Because the more stable coins are in supply, that usually leads to investment in Bitcoin, right? Usually, part of that stable coin is converted to Bitcoin. It's usually the gateway to purchasing, uh, other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. So yeah, it's already increasing, and that's because of the Genius Act, which passed last year, but it goes into effect in January of 2027. So once that happens, I think that you're gonna have even more stable coins, because you have the big institutions that are gonna be creating them.
Yeah, see, I think Trump did the best of both worlds there. This is where I'm not critical of what he's done with this. With stablecoin, it's pegged to the dollar. One stablecoin, $1. He's
Mhm.
holding the dollar up. He's keeping it afloat just by doing that. But it
Yeah.
also lends credence to, hey, crypto is a good place to be, and this is only going to increase because the dollar's in so much trouble. We got to put more stablecoin out there. And if you really play this out to the end, I look at crypto and Bitcoin as reinforcing the dollar like the petrodollar used to.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the dollar, and it basically enhances the reach of the dollar. And um, a lot of the benefits of Bitcoin and crypto in general is the programmability. Sorry, it's really hard to say that. Um, of it. So you can have applications around it. You can build applications around it. You can transfer it, instantly. And there's a lot of things you can do with it. There's the whole world of smart contracts, where you can lend it directly to peers, take the banks out of the equation. Um, and so that opens up a lot of possibilities with the dollar, and as well. So that keeps the dollar in the game, competing, with the rest of the crypto market. So I think it's a good thing.
So where does this go from here, and what do you think my audience should do about this?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, I think year end, the institutional base case is a recovery towards around 100,000. JP Morgan put it at 170,000. At the end of 2025, that was their prediction. I think it's a little high, but yeah, I think we're gonna slowly start recovering. And 2027, the moderate consensus among analysts models 170,000 to 330,000, with Bitcoin, Bitwise framework near 240,000. So the forecasts are pretty good. The Genius Act goes live January 2027. Clarity should be settled by then as well. And 2028 halving sets up the next cycle for an all-time high, a new all-time high, right? The 126,000 was the last all-time high. Next one, could be around 200, over 200,000, 250, who knows, even higher. Um, so yeah, I'd say that, right now we are around the bottom, right? We're somewhere in that bottom. You can dollar cost average. I don't like to, we don't give advice officially, but I always tell people, if you do like this asset, you've done your own research, you want to invest, So now is a great time. You can dollar cost average over the next 6 months to a year. And, but invest most of what you're going to around this time because you'll be well positioned. If I would have done that, in 2028, 2029, I'd be 6 to 12 times my money. So
We always have those what ifs, you know?
there is a what ifs, but I would like to at least take that lesson learned and have others do it. I know it's hard because it goes against, everyone's like, oh yeah, crypto's dead, and it's emotionally it's hard to make that decision, but smart money, they make those types of decisions. So just look at the facts, look at the cycle. Um, you can do it in an IRA with My Digital Money. We help do it in a secure way. So I know some people are afraid to invest because they've heard of hacks and things like that. Well, we do it in a secure way, and we also answer your call. So people they're just afraid because they don't know enough, or so we actually handhold you through it. So if those things are keeping you, holding you from doing it, I think we are a good option, to help you do it in a way that is informed and we're there every step of the way.
I think it's,
Um,
yeah, exactly. And the thing I like about your customer service is you don't have to strain to understand what they're saying. And I don't mean that in a
right.
derogatory way towards anybody, but we've all had those tech problems where we can't
Yeah.
understand what we're being told. And you've got people that'll take time with you and they're professional. That part I do know. And you have a play account on there that's pretty cool too. People can go in there and say, I'm not sure how this works. And you do the play account and you start getting familiar with it.
Yeah.
And I think it
Yeah,
helps
totally.
people
You
ask
can
better
do that.
questions.
Yeah,
It's
and on top of that, we are working on a new platform for next year that will have a lot more features, a lot more cryptocurrencies. We're usually a little conservative with how many cryptocurrencies we bring on because we want to make sure they have longevity and liquidity and they're safe as possible. Um, so, but for next year, we're looking at adding a lot more cryptocurrencies as well as staking and other things that are more innovative because we wanted to do it in a safe way. But we are working on that. We don't have an official date or anything yet, but just so you know, there are exciting things coming for next year.
okay. Now, I'm not asking you for professional advice. Let's just pretend we're sitting in a restaurant for a second, having a cup of coffee, okay? And I say to you, okay, if you were in my shoes, where would you go with your money to jump into crypto or Bitcoin? What would be your top two choices right now, just personally
Yeah.
speaking?
Yeah, so I think having a certain amount of Bitcoin is always good. It's a good place to start.
Mhm.
Um, and then the obvious ones after that, you have Ethereum, which is the second biggest one. But you have XRP. I think XRP is good because um, it has institutional backing. If you're a Bitcoin maximalist and you're all about, not having institutions as part of it, you probably won't like XRP, but XRP is something that technology would be is being adopted by banks, right? So rather than trying to replace the banks so quickly, it's a middle ground. So the banks use it to do international transfers like instead of SWIFT. So it's a better way to do SWIFT. So if you look at, how much investment is going into it and what it's actually solving, I think XRP is a really good option.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I would look at those three. Ethereum is still, number one smart contracts platform. And I would look at other smart contract platforms like Solana. Um, but yeah, those are definitely ones that I would research and look at.
That's what other people in crypto have told me as well, too. They've mentioned those same entities. How do people get a hold of my digital money? Because they would say, okay, I need to jump into this now before it starts rising in price.
Yeah, I mean, mydigitalmoney.com, mydigitalmoney.com. You have our number on there, and you also could get started, fill out an application in like about 5 minutes. And then access your account right away. But you can call us at 833-636-2008. And that number is also on the website, mydigitalmoney.com. So,
Okay, 833 um 636 2008. Okay.
yep.
MyDigitalMoney.com. Guy, it's been a really interesting discussion because we are at a turning point in civilization. I mean, whether people like it or not, we're going from industrial to post-industrial technology and it's going to happen whether we like it or not. And it's time that we all kind of accept what's coming and jump into it and profit at the right time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Guy. Take care.
Have a good one.